Your name, spelling your name for the court reporter?
Sure. My name is LeeAnn Singley. First name is L-E-E, capital A-N-N. Last name Singley, S-I-N-G-L-E-Y.
And what is your particular professional discipline?
I'm a forensic scientist.
Okay, and what areas of forensic science do you specialize in?
So currently I work mostly in bloodstain pattern analysis.
Okay. And can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about your background and your training in bloodstain pattern analysis?
Sure. I guess I'll start with my educational background. I have a bachelor's degree in biology and a minor in chemistry from the University of Pittsburgh. I also received a master's degree with a concentration in forensic science from the University of Florida. In 1987, I was hired as a forensic scientist in the Pennsylvania State Police Crime Laboratory. So I'm just entering now my 39th year in forensics. I spent about 17 years at the State Police Crime Lab and received some training regarding various areas of forensics, but in specific to bloodstain pattern analysis, I started my education in that in 1993. Afterwards, I've had basic and advanced training. I've had training in the math and physics of bloodstain pattern analysis, fluid dynamics of bloodstain pattern analysis, the interaction of blood on fabrics, so a fabrics training class, and other conferences and training opportunities that I've had throughout the years.
Now, ma'am, do you hold any titles on boards or anything like that relating to your professional associations?
So I'm a member, currently a member of the Organization of Scientific Area Committees, which is a federally convened committee that is assisting the bloodstain pattern community in setting down guidelines and standards of how the discipline should be performed. I've been part of that group for a number of years. Prior to that, there was a similar group that was convened federally called the Scientific Working Group on Bloodstain Pattern Analysis. That began in 2002, and I was a member from the inception of that committee up until that committee was replaced through the Organization of Scientific Area Committees, otherwise called the OSAC.
And groups like the OSAC and the previous organization, what's the intent of those?
So as I stated, the intent is to bring together subject matter experts to help to develop guidance documents, standard documents on how the discipline should be performed or the training requirements that are necessary, other features of it. And it's not the only forensic discipline that does this. DNA does this, fingerprints, documents examination. They all have committees that are addressing those issues.
And is this all designed to have uniformity in terms of how it's being practiced?
I'm sorry,
Are what you just described, is that designed to have uniformity of how bloodstain?
Yes. I mean, the idea is that we would like all areas, all agencies or entities that perform this discipline to have a framework to which everybody will perform it the same way, or at least similarly, have the same standards that they would use to do what they do. Initially, Swigstain had a large international involvement, so it wasn't just the United States that was offering information into this committee and into these documents. There was a large international component as well.
Okay, and Swigstain, the company that was the predecessor to OSAC, that stands for Scientific Work Group Stains.
Yeah, so it's Scientific Working Group it was on bloodstain pattern analysis, but they shortened it to Swigstain.
Okay, and did you have any role in running that organization?
Well, as I mentioned, I was a member from its inception. In 2002, I served as the Quality Assurance Committee Chair for a number of years within that group.
And ma'am, have you ever been qualified as an expert to testify in court regarding bloodstain pattern analysis?
I have.
How many times?
So specifically to bloodstain pattern analysis, I'm not sure. I've testified over 90 occasions on various areas of forensics. Greater than 10 of those are bloodstain pattern, maybe more.
And have you ever been qualified in the Commonwealth of Virginia?
I have not.
Okay. Have you ever done work within the Commonwealth of Virginia with police organizations?
Yes, I've conducted training for the Virginia State Police on a number of occasions in bloodstain pattern analysis.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd move Ms. Singley in as an expert in bloodstain pattern analysis.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, so moved.
Ms. Singley, you had an opportunity to see Ms. Groff's presentation yesterday, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you actually know her, correct?
I do.
Through your various affiliations.
Yes, sir.
And were you able to, in arriving at, well, let me show you a few things and see where we go from there. Your Honor, can we show that to the witness?
Yeah, it is shown to the witness.
Okay.
If you can make it a little bigger, it might help her.
Yeah. Not that.
If you double click on the file name right there, you have. There we go. No, you're having the same problem.
Judge, this is the court's PowerPoint that's coming up. I don't know.
The court's PowerPoint? Meaning like their like Microsoft Word suite product license? Or what? If you can't beat them, join them.
Well, ma'am, did you have an occasion to review items in this case?
I did.
And if items of evidence relating to this case?
Yeah, so I received photographs, so I didn't actually have the physical evidence, but I did review photographs and videos and things of that nature that would expose me to what was evidence, turned out to be evidence in this case.
Okay.
Ask about the shadows.
Your Honor, I think I'm going to have to switch the computer just because of that PowerPoint thing that pops up. Can I have a 5-minute recess?
No.
Oh, Penny. And the chat goes wild. Yep, she said no. I mean, they could do lunch.
Ma'am, are you able to see a picture on your screen?
I can.
Did you have an opportunity to review this item as part of the evidence that you reviewed?
Judge, have we identified the photograph?
No, I think it's defense 80, at least that's what it was marked yesterday.
83, I believe, Judge? Is that-
80.
80? Okay.
Yes.
Ma'am, I'm going to have you look at what has been marked as Defense Exhibit 80. Have you seen that?
I've seen photographs of this item before, yes.
Okay, and what is it that you notice when you look at this item right here?
It's a knife. It looks like to be stainless steel, like a chef's style knife, and there appears to be transfer bloodstains or some irregular shaped bloodstains along the knife and the blade.
Now, in talking about bloodstains, is there a uniform terminology, or were there attempts to have uniform terminology as to what bloodstains are and varying other descriptive terms?
You mean the actual terms we use when we're writing
Yes.
reports? Yes, the organization that I mentioned to you earlier has set down standard terminology that we would use in the course of writing reports or training, or even just discussing bloodstain pattern analysis. And so that has been published.
And is that how you find, do you find that the terminology is uniform amongst bloodstain pattern analysis?
The goal, that is the goal, that it would cause uniformity, and it has definitely helped since that terminology has been utilized or has been written and published. To say that everyone is using it correctly or abiding by that terminology, I can't say that for sure, but
Take a dig at
I can
Iris.
definitely say that.
Take a dig at Iris.
The ends have sort of, the end result has been what we had hoped it would be, and that is to cause the uniformity of that terminology across the discipline.
Now, did you have an occasion to also analyze or look at other aspects of evidence, like the forensic science reports and things like that?
Yes, when I do a bloodstain pattern analysis, the discipline itself is the study of the size, the shape, the distribution, location, appearance of bloodstains. But in the course of the bloodstain pattern analysis, we also have to include or consider what we call task relevant information. So information that is relevant to the bloodstain pattern analysis, not necessarily extraneous information, but those things would be like the autopsy report or medical reports if the individual wasn't deceased, or the DNA reports or other forensic laboratory reports that will help to actually include or exclude classifications and ultimate interpretations at the end.
Now, ma'am, if you look at the picture, there's a specific circle relating to an area of that knife that you've just identified.
Just for the record, you had marked that as 80A yesterday.
80,
The one with the circle.
80A, yes, thank you.
That's what you
Identified as Defense Exhibit 80A. Do you see that?
I do.
And do you recall
Iris.
do you recall any analysis that you reviewed relating to that particular area of this knife?
Yeah, this is the area of the knife that is at the base of the blade where the handle meets up, and it is one of the areas that was sampled for DNA analysis.
Okay, and did you observe any findings relating to that?
Yes, this area of the knife had DNA. The DNA of Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan could not be eliminated from that sample.
She's using,
and were there any others
out the gate, she's using the proper terminology to describe this DNA analysis, which Iris did not.
that were excluded from that sample?
I believe Brendan Banfield and Juliana were eliminated.
Okay. And is that what you're referring to? The next page?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's...
Your Honor, I would object. This is not
Well, I mean, he hasn't entered anything into evidence yet, but,
understood.
and I don't know what this would be marked as. Okay,
80B
you already have,
or 80...
you have 80B, 80C, 80D, 82, 83.
I'll go 80E.
80E. All right, he hasn't entered into evidence yet, he's just showing the witness.
And what do you see this is, ma'am?
It's the results of the bloodstain, the DNA report that addressed this area of the knife.
Okay, and that's a report that you reviewed in your analysis?
I did.
And this is a portion to highlight that particular statement?
Yes.
Okay. And ma'am, is this also from the report?
Are you going to mark this something?
80F? Did you have a chance to review that?
Yes.
Okay, and is this also a report that you reviewed, a portion of it?
Yes.
Okay, and what does that tell you?
Again, it's indicating that Christine Banfield,
Your Honor, I would object to the
Again.
witness reading from a report that has not been admitted into evidence and is not the complete
Okay, I'll
report.
sustain that
That's
objection.
fine, that's fine, Judge. And ma'am, did you have occasion to review the Office of the Medical Examiner's report relating to Joe Ryan?
I did.
Okay. And what, if anything, did you observe in your analysis relating to the pictures from the Office of the Medical Examiner?
Well, I looked at the photographs of Joe Ryan at the autopsy examination, and in part of that, I was able to review the injuries that he sustained.
Okay. Now, the topic of self-wounding came up with Ms. Graff yesterday. Is self-wounding something that is often found in knife injuries?
Your Honor, objection is to leading.
Well, I'll sustain as leading if you want to rephrase.
Okay. What, if anything,
What, if anything?
do you find as an expert in knife-related wounds?
So in knife-related activities, investigations that involve sharp instruments, so knifings, things like of those nature, we often see the assailant, it's not uncommon for the assailant to self-wound during those. In fact, when I'm training individuals, it's one of the things I train law enforcement investigators to ensure that they look to areas of the crime scene that may be further away from the victim's bodies to find an isolated blood drop or things like that. So we know this to happen, and it can happen in various mechanisms during the activity that's going on in terms of the criminal investigation. But it's not an uncommon occurrence.
Okay. Were you able to note where the injuries were in your examination for Joe Ryan?
It was on his left thumb, I believe.
Anything? Did you observe anything else?
I think it was a puncture. It was listed as a puncture wound.
Okay. Now, is that the puncture wound that you're talking about?
I'm sorry, I can put it back on.
Sorry.
What,
This would be 80F.
there was ADB yesterday.
80B.
Okay.
So this photo here that you have now.
Yes, this is 80B.
The wound was listed as a central cut puncture of the palmar aspect of the left thumb, and that is what's being depicted here.
Okay. And if ADF, Judge, would that be the next in line?
You have one marked AEC, which I had put down as finger of Joseph Ryan, and I'm not sure if that's the same picture that you used yesterday when you're showing the other expert.
I'm not certain either, Judge. What's the next one, ADD?
Well, we'll do ADC. I mean, we can make this ADC, that's
ADC,
fine. You haven't
yes.
entered it in evidence yet.
What's crazy is Judge Penny asked John Carroll at the beginning of today, like, do you want to deal with like the 80 A, B, C, D? He's like, no.
So, ADC.
And ma'am, is this a picture that you've observed in your analysis of the documentation relating to this case?
Yes, these are part of the autopsy photographs.
And is that the same injury that you've previously discussed and identified?
It's on the left. Yes, it's in the same location.
And what is that picture of, ma'am?
It's another photo of a different orientation of the thumb.
Okay, so the same injury?
What do you
It
want
appears to be, yes.
What we want to mark that as?
I wish we could see, but remember
ADD.
yesterday we
You have
saw
a D,
like
you have an
a
E,
little
and you have an F.
C-shaped
ADD.
kind of clotting on Joseph's hand, thumb. And also there was like a lack of blood between
Now,
his
ma'am, in
fingers
your
as if they were
review of,
clenched.
The body, so let's just go through. What did you review, or did your review include body-worn camera?
It did.
Okay. Were you able to review body-worn camera to determine if there were any injuries to Brendan Banfield's hands?
Yes.
Okay. What, if anything, did you find?
Well, I reviewed the video, the body cam video that took him into the ambulance, and they specifically looked at his hands for injuries, and I guess it was an EMT or whoever was in the ambulance with him, it indicated there were no injuries.
Okay. Now, Ma'am, if you could take a look at the screen. This is the full Office of the Chief Medical Examiner report. Have you had an opportunity to review
There's
that?
nothing on the screen. There's nothing on the screen.
Why didn't I put a Judge Penny emoji? Let me fix that.
Towards indulgence.
Better use the court's indulgence sparingly. He really does need a Kokomo. No. Hey, J Money. They could have just done lunch and then had this witness up. Because local time is 12:41. But, you know.
Court's indulgence still.
Uh, Mavhawk says, I want to help him.
Is it?
Oh my God, they're
Is it
laughing.
showing up on your screen?
It was when he was there.
Yeah, I know. I think I've touched the wrong one.
No. Oh yeah, I forgot. They wanted to call a different witness, but they weren't here yet. You're right, you're right. Dang, and he really tried to, he's like, I have another witness. Tried to keep it moving.
Okay. Ma'am, can you see, can you see the picture on the screen?
I can.
Okay. And you
Hallelujah.
recognize that?
This is the DNA report.
Okay. And I'm going to scroll down. Is this the area down here where the cursor is that you previously reviewed?
Yes.
Okay. And that informed your conclusions as to the blood stain near the handle and the handle juncture?
Yes.
And ma'am, can you see this on your screen?
I can.
Okay, and you've reviewed this. This is the report of June 9th, 2023 of the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner?
Yes.
And I'm just going to scroll down. Ma'am, looking at where the cursor is on the screen, is that what informed you as to the exhibit previously?
Yes, this is an area that describes additional injuries.
Okay. Now, did you have an opportunity to review a report from DLI, a private laboratory?
I did.
Okay, and in that report, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what was the sample that they were providing?
So in the DLI report, there was a sample that that was collected by them on the area of Joe Ryan's jeans. That was the waistband, I think interior and exterior waistband zipper, and I believe the button area. But the significance of their sampling was that in their report, they stated that the sample was taken avoiding staining, meaning that they were not trying to collect staining, they were trying to avoid stained areas of that part of the jeans.
Okay, and what?
This is a really important piece from yesterday that I felt like Iris got a bit contentious with. So Iris Dialygraph. And what they're saying now is they intentionally, because obviously if someone's blood is all over, you're going to have a mixture. Their DNA could contribute to the mixture from the swab if there's blood staining. But she's saying we intentionally tried to avoid where we saw the blood. That way we would have better confidence. Not, she wasn't the one that did the testing, but the individual that did the swabbing, they intentionally tried to avoid the stain so they could have greater confidence in the results without it just being explained by blood after the fact being spattered over. This is very good for the defense. This is very good for the defense.
What would you
The
say
state has
about
to rebut this.
avoiding the staining and still having a laboratory analysis? What are they looking for?
Typically, they're looking for a DNA source that's not coming from staining. So touch DNA, or sometimes they'll do it just to determine who the wearer is of an item of clothing, or sometimes they'll do it just to see if somebody touched that area, that they're curious if they can find the DNA from that individual.
Okay, and do you recall the results of that report?
I believe the results of that area, that included DNA sources from Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan, but Brendan and I believe Juliana were both eliminated.
Okay, so let me kind of shift gears here about blood stain pattern analysis and what
big
you
for the
do
defense.
when you first start out doing it in a case.
You mean my general methodology of how I
Yes.
do an approach? So when I get a case now, and currently I get a case, I want to know as little information about the case as possible. So I try to limit whoever is requesting it from me to just the information that I need to know in terms of the blood stain. So typically that might be like how many individuals were injured, or if there was more than one deceased, more than one bleeder, what their injuries might have been, things of that nature. And then I will get whatever materials are provided to me. I start looking through the photographs, determining what I can say or maybe not say about certain pattern types. We call that the characterization. We characterize them, as I mentioned, through the size, the shape, the distribution, location of the stains. We look to see how they might correlate with each other. And then we begin or attempt to list a classification or classify them in what might have caused them. So earlier I talked about those characteristics, and I think it's important to understand that bloodstain pattern analysis is answering a very different question than DNA analysis. DNA is answering the who, the BPA, the bloodstain pattern analysis attempts to answer the how. So how the bloodstains got to a location. So once I've done that initial preliminary classifications or some idea of what I believe this might be coming from, I'll then incorporate in things like the autopsy report, DNA analysis that will help us to refine that classification, maybe eliminate some things that I might have kept in the running in terms of a classification. Then at the end, we discuss what those classifications mean in terms of the DNA and what we might be able to interpret in terms of individual events or things that happened at a particular crime scene.
Now, can you see the picture that's on the screen there?
I can.
Okay. Your Honor, I would
While he struggle
identify that as
buses.
Defense Exhibit 80.
While he struggle buses with the next exhibit, so some context from the state's expert witness yesterday about this same DNA with the button. Like, we're shifting into a different topic here, but going back to the DNA profiles, the button on Joseph Ryan's jeans, the zipper. Yesterday, when they asked Iris Dallygraph, the state's witness, John Carroll says, well, my understanding, or they asked about, what did they find? And Iris said, my understanding is they found DNA profiles. And John says, did you read that report? That's the report that we just had LeeAnn Singley talk about. She said, I think I did. Then John asked, the request for the analysis was not for bloodstains, but for contact or touch DNA. Is that right? And Iris answered, I don't recall specifically. Maybe we can rewatch that tidbit during lunch.
4?
I believe it's already the Commonwealth's Exhibit 173, is that
So
correct?
Judge, the original picture was admitted as Commonwealth's 173.
Okay.
His manipulation of the picture to show the cropping side by side with the original is not.
Okay,
It's
so,
really not even noticed.
all right, so what number did you want to
I
make?
think 84 was the next one.
Yes, okay.
Ma'am, can you describe what you're seeing there on the screen?
Yes, this is the left forearm of Joseph Ryan and bloodstains that were on that left forearm.
Okay. And did you create this side-by-side comparison?
I did.
And what was the intention of that? What were you trying to show?
Just it gives an overall of the arm. You kind of see it in that perspective. And then just I put a square around the area that I cropped so that you could kind of see it, how it related to the arm in total.
Okay. Your Honor, can I move that in as Defense Exhibit 84 and publish it to the jury?
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, 84 in evidence.
Can you describe what you're looking at for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury and what it is that you do in analyzing something like this?
So first, let's start with what I do when I'm analyzing something like this. Again, I know I'm sounding repetitive, but I look at things like the size, the shape, the distribution, location, and certainly take into consideration the target surface. We know that that has a profound effect on what we see. So we have to think about that when we're looking at things like size and shape, because it can change depending on what the target surface is. This target surface was a bit unique in the sense that it was a forearm that had quite a bit of hair on it. So it provided a different surface than, say, a flat table or even carpet. It tended to have an influence on what we were seeing.
Now, what is it that you can say about this stain pattern?
So I just described what I saw here, which was a linear series, so a series of some irregularly shaped drops or stains that were located on this arm. I did not use the word drop. I used a series of irregularly shaped smaller stains. Because if you look at look at it closely, the stains themselves are almost three-dimensional in shape because they in areas were clinging to the hair on the arm. So it distorted what we can see in terms of its true shape and true, like even the size of it. It was, well, there's no measurement in here, so we really don't have a true
Interesting.
size.
We didn't
Okay,
hear
and
about
so
hair
in-
yesterday and the impact.
In determining what exactly this stain is, you would want measurement?
Well-
And you would check out what the surface is?
Yeah, I mean, we don't always have measurements. Sometimes they're not there, and we can use things in the area that can sort of inform what our size might be. But I don't have a true size. I did call them smaller because they appeared smaller compared to things around it in the area. But yeah, I mean, certainly the more information you have, the more data we can use to then make a classification.
Based on the information that you had relating to these stains, is it possible to make a classification?
I did not make a classification, and this target surface did not lend to classifying these stains to a specific mechanism.
Now, let's switch gears a little bit. In terms of how blood falls on things, can you opine as to what kind of pattern would be created if someone put blood onto a surface?
Put blood on how? How are you? I mean, touching a surface? If it
Holding blood and dropping it?
If an individual had, say, blood in their hands that had enough volume for it to release, like if it were to just drop to the ground, we would call that a splash pattern. So it would be a large volume of blood that is falling due to gravity. It's not, you have to be careful to not include their hands swinging, because if their hands swing in that process, now you have cast off, which is blood being released
Cast off.
from
There
an
you go.
object in motion. If it's just merely
This is so critical for the defense because the state wants the jury to hear and conclude that the only explanation for those droplets, these circles on Brennan Banfield's jean leg, is because it's cast off from when he's stabbing Christine Banfield in the neck. He's the one doing the stabbing, and that there's no other way that that could have been caused. And here we just had, I've talked about it, couldn't it flick? We've talked about it in the chat, but now we're having an expert saying, well, here's this thing that you would expect would cause cast off. Very, very critical. I'm glad they called a separate expert, like a counter expert, and didn't just try to cross the state's expert on this.
Can you opine as to what kind of pattern would be created if someone put blood onto a surface?
put blood on how? How are you? I mean, touching a surface? If it
Holding blood and dropping it?
If an individual had, say, blood in their hands that had enough volume for it to release, like if it were to just drop to the ground, we would call that a splash pattern. So it would be a large volume of blood that is falling due to gravity. It's not, you have to be careful to not include their hands swinging, because if their hands swing in that process, now you have cast off, which is blood being released from an object in motion. If it's just merely falling onto the surface, then you would get a splash pattern. And that usually will then have sort of a apparent area of where the volume of the blood is. And then because that parent area was created with blood sort of collapsing into itself, it'll create satellite spatters around that area.
Okay, and
This is interesting.
Have you?
I wish, like, I hope the state learns from this presentation and understands how critical the terminology is. So right out the gate, this defense attorney, John Carroll, was like, hey, do you guys try to use the same terminology? And I was hoping for a little quip there. The witness politely said, we try to aim, that's the goal, is using uniform language, right? There is a big difference if I say I was coughing versus I was hacking. Like, sure, they both might be a cough, but you would get a very different impression if I said someone was hacking. They were hacking a lung out versus just they coughed for a second. So words are important even if they seem similar. And yesterday I thought it was confusing to follow some of the descriptions of the witness, and the state didn't do a great job of laying out the concepts and making them concrete. And when there's a difference, even if it's a minor difference between two similar words, explain that to the jury and ground us in what exactly you're talking about. And now in a minute here, we've gotten the distinction between a splash pattern, which is falling due to gravity, versus cast off, which involves some sort of momentum from a movement from an object. So if you're swinging your arm and liquid flies off, that would be cast off. And right there, I understand the difference now.
Worked with those kinds of patterns?
Yes, I mean, I make up mock crime scenes for my training, so I've created them myself by doing that.
Now, is it plausible for someone to scoop up blood and carry it to a deposit somewhere?
I'm sorry.
Objection, leading.
All right, I'll sustain as to leading.
What, if anything, well, first of all, let's just talk about how would one scoop blood?
I don't know how you would do that.
Okay.
You mean scoop it up from something, like, I mean, it's a fluid, I think it would be difficult. It's not like you can, like you have a dustpan that you could, you know what I mean? When I think of scooping in that nature, I just think in terms of if I had spilled something on my floor in the kitchen, I wouldn't be able to pick it up with my hands, if that's what you're asking me.
Okay. If does the surface that the blood is on, does that, I mean, you're saying you don't know how it can be scooped, but does the surface matter?
Yes, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you have the blood on something that's porous and absorbent, then there would be less blood that you'd be able to even scoop, if you will. If you know what I mean, there would be less blood. You wouldn't be able to access it because it would be soaking in to an absorbent surface.
Okay. Have you ever experienced in blood stain pattern analysis someone scooping blood and pouring it in another place?
No.
What would be the difficulties of that if that were to have happened?
Well, I think getting it into your hands to begin with would be a challenge, and then transferring it.
Your Honor, I would object at this time. Calls for speculation. She's just testified that she's not had any experience with any scooping of blood, so I'm not.
Speculation.
I think her expertise in blood spatter analysis
I think common
gives her an
sense.
opportunity to opine as to how it could be done if it was.
I'd say
I'll
common
sustain
sense.
that, for that question, I'll sustain the objection if you want to rephrase.
Based on your experience.
Blood as a fluid.
The reason this is important, guys, is because John is countering the idea that they tried to ladle blood and throw it on Joseph and or Christine to make it look like they had killed each other, had been fighting with each other.
Is it possible to pick it up?
It's supposed to sound
Pick it up.
ridiculous.
Pick it up on, yeah, I mean, I think I think the difficulty here is, of course, you can touch blood and it picks up onto your fingers, right? Like if you, as a transfer stain. I think the fact that it's a fluid, the challenge is that if you're trying to collect and keep it in the confines of your hand, the first part is getting it into your hands, and the second part is not having it seep back through your fingers, out of your hands. Does that make sense? So the only thing I can use to describe it is when I'm making a mock crime scene, sometimes
Mock crime
we'll put
scene?
blood in our hands and make like an impact pattern from it. And just putting small amounts in the hand, it's difficult to contain it in the hand, even in doing that, right? So that's about the closest I can get to having an experience of what it's like to actually, and that's when we pour it into our hand from, a
This
cup.
is gold.
I know this sounds a little.
Do you guys see why this is gold? She's basically saying even when we intentionally and calmly try to stage a scene in a controlled environment, we cannot just scoop up this liquid and throw it all willy-nilly. And this is the witness carrying this. This really isn't the attorney carrying this. This is the expert witness carrying this. But this is critical because the idea that you can just scoop up blood that's been laying, it's either on a carpet or on someone's clothing, or maybe on the edge of the bed sheet. How would you be able to pull and gather this liquid from these fabrics to be able to splatter it around? And that's the state's theory. The ridiculousness that we're listening to, what are they talking about scooping this up? It's the state's theory. So
We do this, because we use real blood when we do
the red
training.
cups.
So I know what it's like to have blood in the hand and trying to work with it in that way.
Oh, that's
It's a challenge.
Okay. So just to follow through with your example, what is it that you're trying to show when you would do these trainings?
So all I'm doing is, or me or my trainer will put in there, because we're going to ultimately smack it to create an impact pattern. And by putting it in your hand, you're able to place your hand in a mock crime scene to kind of mimic where somebody might have been beaten or something like that. So we're using it as a training tool for that purpose. It was just an example of the challenge of keeping it contained within the palm of your hand.
Okay. Now, going back to your review of the evidence in this case for purposes of blood stain pattern analysis, did you see anything that indicated that Joe Ryan not being involved in the stabbing?
Oh,
Leading?
Yes, I'm sorry, objection, leading.
All right, I'll sustain as to leading.
Okay. What indications, what if anything, do you look at to
What if anything?
determine if someone's involved or not involved in an incident dealing with stabbing?
I think maybe I would like to answer it in the methodology of how I look at a bloodstain case. Once I've evaluated the pattern types and come to some classifications and come to some interpretations of how they might relate to each other, I might be asked, or sometimes I'll even have information, like I might have had in this case, to look at it and think of it in terms of statements that were made, or in that we had information from the body cams that I had when I was looking at that. So when I do that, I can kind of evaluate the evidence to see if there's anything that sort of doesn't seem to align with one way or another, or some things that, not necessarily that do, but more looking for the things that might raise, quote, the red flag, like kind of go, oh, this doesn't seem to align with that. Maybe I need to do some more exploration or find out more information about that. So that's what I did in this case.
Okay, and did you, and it sounds to me like you're looking for things that rule someone out and things that stay with the possibility of being one of the people there.
Yes.
Okay. In your pattern analysis, bloodstain pattern analysis, did you find anything that would exclude Joseph Ryan as being involved in the stabbing?
Objection calls for a final conclusion, goes to the.
If you want to approach.
Yes, please.
You tried to do it yesterday. Yeah, this witness is like, the state's theory sucks. And I still think the most critical thing that we got here was the clarification on that, the swabbing, the intentional swabbing, which is really coming from the lab. It's not an opinion from either one of these expert witnesses. It's just she looked at the report and is letting the jury know that the DNA swabbing was intentionally done to avoid the blood staining.
Ma'am, you had an opportunity to
Oh.
listen to Ms. Graff yesterday, correct?
Yes.
Now, in terms of your discipline of blood stain pattern analysis, is it your experience that everything can be labeled based upon an analysis?
Oh.
Judge, objection is leading.
What, if anything,
I'll sustain the objection, go ahead.
yes, what, if anything, is your experience as to labeling every aspect of spots, even if they're not tested?
I'm not sure what you mean by labeling. You mean classifying them? Like,
Classifying, sorry. That's
I'm sorry, state again. So what is my experience regarding whether you can classify everything
Yes.
in a crime scene? Oh, no, many times we can't classify certain stain patterns because of some of the things I already mentioned. It could be the target surface, the amount of stains that we have, the other data that isn't just available for us to form that classification. So that's not uncommon. And we can't really classify every single blood stain. We don't attempt to in many cases.
Iris
We
did.
could be doing it a long time if we tried to identify or even address every blood stain that's at a crime scene.
okay. And in listening to her testimony yesterday, did you have any agreement or disagreement with what she said about certain blood stains?
There were certain blood stains that I did not provide a classification for that she did.
Okay. And are there any in particular that you're speaking of?
Well, the forearm stains was one area. The 4 irregularly shaped stains that are on the forearm, she provided a classification for as being drip stains, and I did not.
Okay. And why did you not provide a classification?
Again, as I stated, the target surface here really distorted or what we were able to
It's
see to get that
cylindrical.
sort of well-formed circular stain that you would be looking for to be able to say that it's a drip stain from the exclusion of all other mechanisms. Because once you've classified it as a certain mechanism, you've excluded everything else. I didn't feel there was enough information here for me to do that. And this target surface, it would be inappropriate, I believe, to do that because the target surface was not ideal for being able to do that.
Now, if you didn't have enough information, would it be possible after the fact, which is what was?
Objection is to leading.
All right, I'll sustain the leading. Is this a good time to take our lunch break?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, all right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take our lunch break for an hour.
Over the
Please
lunch,
discuss
learn
the
how to ask
testimony with
better
any-
questions.
Discuss the case with anybody, and don't do any outside research, okay? Thank you.
So what this is getting into, and again, I think the witness is doing the carrying here. The witness is asking for the clarification on the questions. But hey, compared to what Iris testified, you watched Iris's testimony. That was the witness yesterday that the state put on. Iris said that blood is objective. Can you always classify everything? And this witness says no. And when you classify something, that's saying that every other possibility has been
Again,
excluded.
since you're testifying, you can't discuss your testimony with anybody this time to include the defense team, okay?
Okay.
All right, that's fine. So we'll come back at 2:05. You're going to make sure all your technology is ready for the afternoon.
I'm
To
gonna-
include your exhibit numbers, please.
I was actually going to just talk to your clerk and make sure that I had all of the,
All right, to make sure
This
you
meal.
get it straight. And
Guys, we are 5 minutes away from when the court is supposed to be back in session for the Brennan Banfield trial. But I wanted to pull up before we get back to the defense's expert, the blood spatter expert, this issue of the swabbing, the testing in the button area, the zipper area of Joseph Ryan's jeans. And I've got to walk back my criticism of Iris a little bit because I think it's the state in the way that they're questioning. It seems like the state doesn't want to talk about the DNA report. Remember, this is the same issue that the state stipulated to very quietly and quickly at the end of the day on Thursday. So let's go to the first clip which is going to be a short bit of questioning on direct. So we've got 3 short clips we're going to go through.
You noticed those blood stains on the jeans?
There's a transfer on the left front of the jeans. There's a transfer on the inside of the jeans waistband at the buttonhole.
Thank you. Did you review the certificates of laboratory analysis submitted in this case?
I did.
And whose DNA profile was present in the swabs of the blood from Joe Ryan's hands?
So notice how they go right to the swab on the hands. So we're talking about the button area, then we go to swab on hands. So we did hear Iris talk about these DNA reports, but at this point, she wasn't actually asked about the DNA analysis in relation to the swabbing in the button area. So I think the state wanted to move on. Didn't want to get too far into that. The next clip that we have is, let's see, about 30 minutes later.
In conjunction with your reading of Commonwealth's Admitted 151, the lab from DLI, about Mr. Ryan's reading. All right, what observations did you make in conjunction with your reading of Commonwealth's Admitted 151, the lab from DLI, about Mr. Ryan's pants and any blood stains observed there?
My recollection of the analysis was that both profiles, DNA profiles from Christine Banfield and DNA profiles from Joseph Ryan were found in stains on the jeans.
All right, let's talk about them one by one. Specifically, did you examine the area in the photo of the button and the zipper?
There was a sampling from that area that I read the DNA analysis report for that sample.
Okay, and
So she's asked about this area. She goes right into, I read the DNA report for the sample.
all right.
Let's run that back and then watch
let's-
the prosecutor switch.
Well, let's talk about them one by one. Specifically, did you examine the area in the photo of the button and the zipper?
There was a sampling from that area that I read the DNA analysis report for that sample.
Okay, and that sample of blood, were you able to determine if it was a flow, spatter, or transfer?
The stains on the area of the button and the buttonhole were contact stains or transfers.
So Iris is going with the flow of the prosecutor's question. It is the prosecutor that conflates, and that's how I'm looking at it now on replay. The jury doesn't have replay, but it's the prosecutor in her question that conflates the DNA testing in this area with the blood stains that are visible in this area. And Iris does say, you know, the blood stains. She doesn't go back to talking about the DNA report. So they move on after this.
Looking at, if I may advance to Commonwealth's previously admitted 101.
So it goes on to a different topic, a different area. And then on cross, when John Carroll asks about this, I think this is why Iris was so adamant, like, hey, I didn't really testify to those specific things. Because it's the prosecutor's question.
Now, you referenced a DLI report in your direct testimony. It said it was a private lab that the Commonwealth hired to do an examination. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I remember some of the reports were DLI.
Okay, well, there was only one, and the one was relating to the DNA that was being sought inside Joe's zipper in his button of his pants.
Zipper.
Do you remember that?
I don't recall it being inside the zipper. It was identified to me that some sample in the area of the button or in that area was in fact sampled, and that they did find DNA profiles.
Okay, and Did you read that report?
I think I did.
Okay. Isn't it true that the request for the analysis was actually not blood stains? The request for the analysis was around the blood stains for contact or touch DNA. Do you remember that?
I don't recall anything in it that said specifically how it was sampled.
Okay. So, but what my question is you spoke about transfer stains to the Commonwealth when they asked the question. You spoke about inside the zipper where the button connects, all those sorts of things. And you spoke about blood transfer stains, didn't you?
I said on the back side of the buttonhole that I could see in the image transfer stains.
So she did say that. That is what she was saying. It's the prosecution that really muddied the question after their own witness mentioned the DNA report, because she's the one that volunteers in the first set that we watched. You know, I looked at the lab report and the prosecutor was like, no, but the stains. Don't talk about the lab report.
Okay.
I did not say what DNA was present in those transfer stains, just that there was a report in that area, and I think it was the button side as opposed to the buttonhole side.
But my question is, did you realize that the request for DNA was not for any blood stains? It was for touch DNA around that area that was described.
Judge, objection, facts not in evidence.
Overruled if she can answer.
And now does that objection make more sense? Beyond just being like, you know, I think the state purposely questioned the way they questioned on direct to avoid this very thing that they very quickly and quietly stipulated to at the end of the day on Thursday. So.
Did you realize that?
As I said, I wasn't a party to sampling. I don't know exactly how the sampling was done.
Okay. Well, I guess my question then is, how did it just automatically talk about transfers in that area when that wasn't part of any sort of scientific testing done by the Commonwealth of Virginia or their hired DNA person?
Judge, I'm sorry, I have to object. He is mischaracterizing what is in the certificate of laboratory
Legal
analysis.
objection, Ms. Hands.
Facts not in evidence.
Overruled.
I testified that I saw stains, particularly on the back side of the buttonhole.
Okay.
And looking at those stains, identified that as transfer stains.
Transfer stains versus transfer DNA. So different things here.
And despite the fact that the DNA lab didn't deal with stains at all, was that something that you dealt with the Commonwealth in preparation? Is that why you talked about stains?
I identified the stains because I looked at the picture and I saw the stains and I said what I saw. That is a separate issue from any testing that may have been done for DNA in that area.
Now, we looked at the hip stain that you identified.
And now they move on, and you can hear the state whispering in the background. But I really do think, as much as I still have an issue with blood is objective and that whole thing, this is either the state genuinely didn't understand the difference between what the lab actually tested for, and so they didn't understand why their own witness was answering the way that they were. Or, and I think this is more likely just based on the decision to stipulate and not harp on it, and that objection we just saw, they don't want the jury to hear the difference. So I think that was a interesting little throwback. Let me politely shout out Iris for realizing that there were two different things being discussed here. Although it seems like a cluster F, if you don't slow it down and piece it together. Back over to live court. Let's see if we have action.
All right.
So we are back from lunch. I really think this is what it is, Banjo, Banjo and Kazooie.
Your next question?
They understood. They wanted to muddy the water.
Ms. Singley, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You listened to Ms. Groff's testimony yesterday, correct?
Yes.
Did you hear her discussion of the position of Joe Ryan and the blood, whatever she called it, on Joe Ryan? Do you remember that discussion?
Yeah, you mean specific to his arm? Or is that what you're referring
Specific to
to?
his position on the ground.
Yes, I did hear her talk
Okay.
about that.
Did you agree with that?
That the bloodstains would indicate that he was lying on the ground?
Yes.
No.
And what can you point to in your expertise that would have you arrive at that conclusion?
Well, so I guess starting with, I believe that she mentioned that the stains that were the 4 linear stains that I did not classify, she classified them. So that's where the first divergence was. So and then that classification is what led her to say that he would have been in a position lying on the ground when they were deposited, if I recall correctly. So the first part is that as I mentioned before lunch, the target surface didn't lend to classification to start with, and to go on to then determine what that classification would mean in terms of his positioning is the part where it starts by the fact that I didn't believe that a classification could be made. Then to go on further to say what that classification would mean would be why I would disagree.
Okay. And was there evidence that you observed that would have supported different conclusions than that, other than not being able to classify?
So maybe the best way to describe this is to have you understand what a drip stain is in terms of bloodstain pattern analysis. A drip stain is a stain that is formed by gravity alone. So it's not just a circular stain you see on a surface. It's a circular stain that arrived by a passive formed by gravity. So it's not something that happened that's circular from another mechanism, but it just happened to hit the ground at perpendicular, making it circular. It is formed only through gravity alone. So the fact that I didn't classify it as anything was the first part. But then on top of that, if you have just the fact that something is circular does not make it a drip stain. It's one of the features you can look at, but it doesn't mean that it's a drip stain. So there are other mechanisms that when the blood is going through the air, say from an impact, say somebody was being beaten with a hammer. When the blood goes through the air, it goes in a parabolic arc, and if it doesn't hit anything in that trajectory, it will eventually fall to the ground, and when it hits the ground, it's going to look circular. But if it hits the wall on the vertical surface, it's going to look circular there too, because anywhere it hits a perpendicular, it will look circular. But we look at the size of them to kind of help to inform whether it could just be a drip stain, something that just was because somebody was standing over something and dripping blood, or if it was because of another mechanism. So because we didn't have a lot of these features, there was no classification done, because the size helps to inform that, and then the shape itself and the fact that we had this target surface to eliminate any of those other mechanisms, to only say that these are coming from drip stains and coming from above was part of the problem. Going further, if they were drip stains, it doesn't mean that because his arm was this way that he was down on the ground. It just means that the arm was in a position horizontal to where the passive drop was coming. Because people move around, your arm can be your body can be in different positions when you do that. So the orientation of your body and where that is in relation to where the blood is coming from is going to be how it will look like on that surface. But it's hard to then say, oh, the person was in this position just because there's something circular here that I think is a drip stain, and therefore because it's coming from above, he has to be on the ground laying down.
And if you were, as you've indicated in your previous testimony, that you would need more information, what more would you need other than what you just said? in order to even make the determination.
Objection calls for speculation.
You mean, what, I'm sorry.
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm just asking her what other tools.
Overruled, that's fine.
Yeah, I think, I mentioned earlier, same answers as I would be looking at the size, shape, distribution, location, appearance. Those are the features that I look for and determine that this is a drip stain to the exclusion of all other mechanisms. I would want to look for something that would look perfectly circular, that I could see scalloping all around the edges or spining around the edges, or it's perfectly circular on, like, say, a smooth surface, and that it has some size to it that would indicate that it's coming from just gravity forming it. If it's tiny, then, and I see it in terms of other, maybe in terms of other spatter stains in that area, I'm going to presume it's coming from, or classify it as something coming from a mechanism that's a spatter-producing mechanism, as opposed to just a single passive drop. So sometimes we can't tell. I mean, we just have to look for those features and hope that if the target surface allows for it, we can classify it.
And in the absence of concrete information, is it appropriate to default toward a
Objection, leading.
classification?
Sustain is deleting.
In the absence of additional information you want, how does one resolve that?
You go back to the higher classification. So if we start at blood stain, and then we might go to a spatter-producing mechanism of some sort, and then we can classify that either to cast off or impact or expirated blood. If we don't have the features to meet those on each level of that, we revert back to the level that's higher. And so in this case, I just said, these are blood stains, and I described them. They were irregularly shaped, somewhat three-dimensional on the arm.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
So to stay with where we just left off.
Okay.
You're keeping it at the classification level that's up here because you don't have enough information to go a next step. Is that correct?
Yes.
But that doesn't inherently mean that that next step isn't a possibility, right?
You sound like a defense
I don't
attorney.
consider the possibilities, because if I can't go beyond the classification, then I didn't go beyond the classification. There's a reason I stopped.
Sure.
So I wouldn't.
But because you stopped, that then leaves all of the options still available. None have been excluded, correct?
Sounds like reasonable
I mean,
doubt.
every possible mechanism that could possibly produce a blood stain.
Yes,
Yes, I guess, yes.
yes,
Yeah.
including drops from above.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Going back for just a moment, you testified regarding the DLI lab.
Here we go.
And you stated that the test sample was the pull from the genes avoiding staining. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, say that again. I
You
didn't hear that.
testified about the DLI DNA lab, specifically that the sample was a swab or a portion of Joseph Ryan's genes avoiding staining. Is that
That's what
correct?
the
Avoiding,
report
yes,
said.
avoiding staining, yes,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
but did you
report
also read in the report that that sample was positive for blood?
Yeah, so it didn't say it was positive for blood. It said that blood was indicated in the sample. And so what that means is that they did a presumptive test. So that's a test that,
Right, we heard about that from our DNA experts. but-
so we didn't, the blood wasn't identified in that sample. It was an indication that there was blood there. And I think to clarify that the testing that is used in that instance is a very sensitive test that can pick up blood that you
Judge, I'm going
can't
to
see.
object. I don't think she's presented any foundation for knowledge of how the testing was conducted.
It's in the report, though.
And that wasn't my question.
All right, we're going to ask your question again. Let's go
Okay.
that way.
The laboratory result said that blood was indicated, yes or no?
That's not what you asked me, though. You said it was found. The test only said that blood was indicated,
Okay,
and yes.
thank you. That's all I have, Judge.
Okay, any redirect? Is this witness subject to recall?
Wow.
Yes.
All right, so
I just,
since you're subject to recall, just don't discuss your testimony with anybody, all right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon, if I can consult with counsel for
Yes.
just a moment.
I think there was a way that the prosecution could have worked with this, but they should have done it out the gate. They should have done it right away. But they distanced
The
themselves
witness
from
is
it.
not subject to recall.
Okay, you are not subject to recall, ma'am, so you're free to go if you wish. All right, thank you. All right, your next witness?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.